Now, the last time that I created a video, I ended up creating an overview of how the Bunny League makes money in Star Wars Interworlds. A few topics came up to dive into after that, and today we're going to be taking a look at the logical overview for space stations and also kind of general standing orders for traders that I have employed so that our different factories and stations can interact with each other relatively smooth-ishly. Yes, smoothishly. That's the best I can hope to promise. So I'm currently in Kaylee, which is near Bastion right here. And if we look at what we have in the sector, we've got a decent amount of Rhydonium. We've got Rhydonium and Sunlight at 40%. Now, the Rhydonium core factory, if we go to plan build, will show you that we've got a ton of energy cells. We've got a bunch of Rhydonium refineries. We've got some solid storage. And then we've got some container storage and then docks of different kinds. That's it, right? So if we look at the logical overview, it simplifies things even further. And you can kind of break this down into two different types of fields, right? So if you see the blue field, that's the production field. That's where all of the modules that have an input or an output or both will be located. And then we've got the black fields, which are the storage fields. And this tells us a lot about the intermediate wares, the incoming goods, the products, and where they're stored and in what types of containers they're stored. And it also allows us to control some other features as well. Here you can see that we've got 29 energy cells kicking it up. There's no input to that. They only have an output. And then if we click on energy cells, you'll see that the storage type is actually designated right here. Energy cells require a container storage unit, not a solid storage unit, not a liquid storage unit, but a container storage unit. That's very important. So that's why we built container storage units on this station. Then Rhydonium, you can see it's got a different storage type that requires solid storage right there, which is why if you go over to our station itself, you'll see that we actually have Imperial large containers here, and we've got Imperial large solid containers, this for the Rhydonium ore, and this is for the energy cells and the Rhydonium core products. Now, if we go back to the logical overview, you can see that the energy cells, they make, well, the energy cell production makes energy cells. Those energy cells and the Rhydonium brought in from miners are then combined together in Rhydonium refineries to output 2700 per hour Rhydonium core, and then they're deposited in storage type container. So that's the entire flow from left to right. Now, what's the first thing that I do whenever I set up a station? Let's say I've gone through and I just built this thing, or it's in progress, and you know I need to make sure that it's set up so that it will at least interact with the rest of our network seamlessly. First things first, I'm gonna want to go ahead and back on out and go over to player information right here. And then on the left side, there's global orders with this little globe right here. So under trade rules, I actually have my own faction rule, but let's go ahead and do it from scratch. Essentially, I'm going to make a test rule. So we'll take trade rule 2. I'm going to call it test rule our faction, like that. And then it says set trade rule as default 4. I suppose I could set it as a default, but I'm not going to do that. I'm just going to say I'd like to restrict all factions from trading, except for, it automatically will say additionally allowed factions, the Bunny League. That's us. Any station that uses this trade rule, we can trade with only our own. We will not trade with any other AI factions. If you want to add more factions to trade with, so let's say you say I want to trade with a Bunny League and the Empire, you can add like the Banking Clan, you can add someone else, I guess Galactic Empire is an example, and say okay. Then you'll see that we will not trade with anyone except for the Bunny League or the Galactic Empire. In this case, I like to only trade with myself as a trade. Well, I'm going to save that, and it will appear on the left side here, test rule our faction, right? So if we go back to the Rhydonium core logical overview, now the first thing I'll do is, let's clear this all out. So I'm just going to mark these all as they normally would be. They'd be like this to start, right? So I'd come over to energy cells. It's just divvied up into 3 different sections. How much storage capacity will we dedicate to this good? How much of it will we be taking in? And then how much of it will we be selling or putting out? How much storage should we set aside for energy cells? Well, a good number to look at is the consumption per hour. So in this case, I've got 20 Rhydonium core refineries at work, and you can see down below that they're going to consume 360,000 energy cells per hour. If you don't have your Rhydonium refineries moving, then you won't see that consumption number. So a good backup to that is to actually click on this little checkbox that says show raw production process, and that will actually show you the individual per production module inputs and outputs. So in this case, one Rhydonium refinery will utilize 18,000 energy cells per hour and 4,050 Rhydonium ore per hour, and output 135 Rhydonium core per hour. So in this case, if I were to round up and I say, okay, well, one Rhydonium refinery is going to use 20,000 energy cells, let's say, and I multiply that by 10, that's 200,000 energy cells, and then I multiply that by 2 to bring it up to 20, that's 400,000 energy cells, right? And I can go ahead and say, okay, I'm going to uncheck this. I would like to store about 400,000 energy cells. Now, mind you, we do have the consumption number. It does say 360,000 here, but it never hurts to just round up to the nearest nice number. So in this case, I'm going to use 400,000. Then I'll go over to buy offer. I'll uncheck automatic buy amount and just max out. So it might be like this at 1. I'm just going to go ahead and hit the set to maximum and match that amount. So this means I'm setting aside 400,000 cubic meters of space. I want to fill up that 400,000 cubic meters of space. And then I'm going to uncheck automatic pricing and drop it as low as possible. And I want to make sure that I'm only buying or taking in energy cells from our faction. That's where I choose the test rule, our faction. So what that means is I've set aside 400,000 cubic meters for energy cells because I know I'm going to use 360,000. I'm going to buy up to 400,000 cubic meters of energy cells, meaning I'm basically buying it for myself. I mean, essentially, I'm creating energy cells here. So because of this rule down here for our faction, the test rule, I'm not going to buy from anybody but us. So if I need to supplement this for some reason, something gets backed up or something gets destroyed or something like that, if we do end up buying energy cells from another one of our stations, we'll only buy it from ourselves. We won't just start buying it from the Galactic Empire or something like that. I've just dropped the price in order to minimize the amount of funds that our manager is going to need. And then how much am I going to sell? Well, this is where you can kind of mess around with things. I mean, it doesn't hurt to keep this the same number and just not sell to the AI. But if you want to be really, really exact, you can say, well, we used 360,000. I'm going to sell all but 360,000. And I'm going to make sure that I can sell this to anybody. So I'm going to go ahead and drop the price to the lowest so that we're going to be the lowest price in town, drawing a lot of interactions from the AI factions. And then I'm going to make sure that I don't specify that it's only to us. So that's how I would set up every single one of these boxes. Rhydonium, the Rhydonium core, etc., etc. I'm going to go to every box. I'm going to do this process right here. It's kind of manual, but once it's set up, you can kind of see how things suss out and then tweak it from there. And then when it comes to the final product, I've gone ahead and I've said I'd like to have, you know, some arbitrary amount, and then I'm going to sell all but one of them. So that means, hey, I'm making these Rhydonium core. We're going to store up 12,000 of them, and I want to sell them all. I don't want to keep any of them here. I'm making them, and then we're going to ship them out. So you can already see that we've got a YT1300M. That's one of ours. It's in green, and it's coming on over, and the Rhydonium core are really, really large, so it can only hold 19 in its storage hold. It's already coming on over to grab this stuff and bring it back to Bunny League HQ. So that's a left to right logical overview. So that's a general setup right there, and that's just cranking along. Now, mind you, the question may come up like, how many miners do you need? I generally only use large miners at a certain point, so I don't have to worry about the Yuuzhan Vong because their shields will regen faster than the Yuuzhan Vong can damage them. Well, I just start with a couple of Heraclin ore miners, and then I take a look. Are we constantly at a deficit? And then I'll just keep tossing in more and more miners until we're no longer at a deficit, and it's starting to look more like this, right? Where these things are always active. Sometimes you might see that only 18 are active. Sometimes you might see only 14 are active, and you can kind of determine, oh, I might need more input, or maybe I don't have enough space for output. Yeah, we're going to go over the standing orders in the sector, and we're going to look at our Bunny League HQ as a good example of different stations interacting with each other all within one sector. It's kind of a nice convenient example. Now, before we do that though, we are going to need to pull down a mod. The bunnies introduced me to the Mules Supply and Warehouses Extended mod. This mod introduces new roles or assignments for different traders that are a little more flexible, let's say, than the standard trading orders. You can kind of do all the same things that we're going to do here with standard trade orders, but maybe it's a little more finicky, and maybe it's something that you need to order your stations in a very specific way to get the most out of it. This mod makes it flexible enough. You can kind of cram a bunch of traders into one fleet and just let them do their thing. We need to make sure we grab that and then install it. Fortunately, it's only a few hundred kilobytes. I'll leave a link down in the description below. Actually, one thing to note, if you head on over to their GitHub, I'll also leave a link to this. If you scroll down, you'll see that there's a really nice set of descriptions for every single option when it comes to the different roles that you can select. But we'll go over 2 out of the 4 mules just very briefly in this video. It's going to be the supply mule and then also the station mule right here. Though the distribution mule and the traveling mule have more specific applications, we're just going to focus on those 2 because I find that generally they do most of what it is that I need. So here we are over at the Bunny League HQ. You can see that we've got a bunch of factories that serve as inputs for our Bunny League HQ, and the Bunny HQ has all of the ship production on it. So essentially it's like a target warehouse for all of the factories on the right side of the screen. All of these factories, if we look at their logical overview, like for field coil and shield components, you'll see that they've got their rules set up just the same way that we went over a moment ago, and then they've got certain outputs. I basically have 2 different fleets. I've got a medium bulk freighter fleet right here, and then I've got a small trader fleet right here, and I've got 20 of each. Now, why do I have them in separate fleets? Because essentially for each size, they do different things. I generally see that small and medium traders, I do most of my in-sector or short-range travel because they've got the best throughput. It's a lot faster to move a small trader back and forth between docks than it is to take a gigantic XL trader and have it slowly turn around, bank off, undock slowly, move to the next one, pick up a bunch of stuff, undock, slowly turn around for like 10 minutes. You know what I mean? Whereas a small trader is like a fighter. It just goes, it dives in, it drops off, it goes, it dives in, it drops off. It's much, much smoother, much faster, fills in a lot of the flow gaps. Now, they're both set up the same way. So we're going to go ahead and just look at the small trader fleet that I have right here. And we're going to look at the template. So if we actually click on the, I guess, the lead of the fleet, I actually titled it Small Supply Lead, and then we go over to the information tab on the right side of the screen and then select the behavior tab. You'll see that we've got different types of behaviors down below, right? And we've actually selected supply mule. So just for the interest of the example, I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to pull out one of these traders, and we're going to make them their own separate thing. We're going to start from scratch. And if we go over to unassigned vessels, there it is. So here we are. I'm going to pause again. So we've got this unassigned small trader right here. He's not part of the fleet. He doesn't have any trade orders. His only behavior is to hold position in place and do nothing. I'm going to go ahead and hit the default behavior. And with the supply mule mod, if you go down to trade, you'll see that there's now M1 through 4 different roles. In this case, we want supply mule. That says supplies own stations needs, right? If we look at GitHub, the description for the supply mules are meant to buy supplies for your station to keep production going, or buy cheap wares for your trade hubs. So that's perfect. So I'm going to go ahead and select that, and you'll see a bunch of selections down below. Now you can actually assign a supply mule to a specific station. I could have all of these vessels all assigned to the Bunny League HQ and say serve every need of the Bunny League HQ. That's it. However, I found it a lot more flexible and a lot easier if I assigned it to the sector as a whole. If you click on home station or sector, it allows you to select a target. Now I can right click, let's say, on the Bunny League HQ like this and select it, and it will appear right here on the right. I can even say assign ship to station, and it will not be in a fleet that's separate. It will nestle itself inside of the hierarchy for the station itself. I don't want to do that. What I want to do is I just want to have a giant fleet where I just adjust the leader, and then everyone else just mimics the order. That way you can make fast changes, and if I want to add more ships or remove ships or anything like that, it's very easy to do. I just assign them to the leader, and they instantly pick up all of the adjustments to what we're doing right now. So now I'm going to go home station or sector. I'm going to just right click anywhere in unknown region 3 where all of the factories are that I want to interact. I'll see select, and now you see it says unknown region 3 on the right side. I'm not going to assign it to the sector. Max jumps from home. In this case, every single station that I want to interact with each other is all in the same sector, so there's no point in going out of sector. I'm just going to drop this. So maximum jumps from your home sector, unknown region 3, 0. I want it to stay in sector. It's a small trader. It's vulnerable. I don't want it jumping out without protection, right? So that's what that means. Now, serve the source only. I mean, that's fine. I'm just going to leave that out. And then collect from player. Yes. Collect from AI factions. I'm going to uncheck that. Now, that really only comes into play when the AI has factions in the same sector. If there were a bunch of Imperial stations out here as well, they were making the same things that I am making, I don't want them to interact with those stations. I only want them to grab my stuff, right? Because then I can actually earn a profit and I don't have to worry about buying them, you know? So I'm going to uncheck collect from AI factions. Allow build storage. That's kind of a nice one to have. Allow resources, allow intermediates, allow trade wares. I'm going to leave those all checked. Basically, build storage allows it so that if you're building something or you add in a new module or something like that, you'll need to supply materials to build storage. Usually you'll have to pay funds for that construction. This will allow the supply mule to go anywhere within its Purdue or network and see if there's any surplus goods that can serve that build storage, and then it'll move them there as a priority. So I'm going to leave that checked. If you don't want that to happen, you can uncheck it. Allow resources. That means if you need to move Rhydonium or you need to move gases, if it can carry that, let's say, etc., then, you know, that's all helpful. Allow intermediates, that's like refined metals, stuff like that, that's already been refined and is an input for something else. I don't mind them moving those materials back and forth between each other if there's a surplus. And then allow trade wares. That's what we're really interested in. Before we dive into the trade wares, down below that, there's fill cargo hold. I'm going to drop this to the minimum. In this case, it's 25%. All that means is that if I'm a small trader and I want to deal in moving Durasteel plates and there's only one Durasteel plate left, I'm going to let that Durasteel factory build up some more of a stockpile before I grab those Durasteel and start moving. I don't want to just immediately grab that one plate and move it across, right? Not worth my time. So in this case, I've lowered the threshold as far as possible. The moment at least a quarter or 25% of my cargo hold it can be filled with a trade order, then it's all right for me to go. You can raise that to make sure that only when it's like 95% full or something like that, then that's kosher. But there are times when you want to move little bits of things, especially with like build storage where they say, I need 4 droid parts. So in that case, I'm always going to be bumping that down as low as possible in sector trade, right? Finally, for player buy mod, I just dropped that out entirely. It's basically binary. It's like, how much do I care about the prices set from one station to another? I don't want to care. The only thing I want to pay attention to is the logical overview and whether I have a surplus or a deficiency. And I want to, you know, I want them to make that determination without consideration of the price, because they're not going to have to pay anything because we're just moving goods back and forth, right? And then for percentage of trades to eval, that's more of a performance and optimization thing. I'm just going to leave it at 100%, okay? So then the last thing to do is to actually tell the trader what goods you want it to actually move. The easiest thing to do, I'm going to actually always say select lock ware list. That makes it so that when you add or remove wares like this, it will actually keep your choices, hard code them, so to speak, instead of saying, well, this material is more important than what you told me to pick up, so I'm going to pick that up instead. I don't want that. I want full control. So I'm going to lock the ware list. Now you can click add remove wares. It's going to show you everywhere in the game right here. The easiest thing to do is just to select all of them and then say okay. You'll see them appear on the right side, which means now you've cleared this trader to work with any of these types of materials. Now that might be all well and good, and that's totally going to work. That's totally fine. However, you should note that when you've got many vessels and they're all operating off an order like this, because of the trades that you're evaluating, it will hit performance pretty hard. So my suggestion would be go ahead and select all of them at once. They're in a list right here, and just delete the things that you don't need. So in this case, back to solution. I don't make back to solution. I don't use that. Bofu. I'm not Boron from X4 Foundation, so I don't need Bofu, etc., etc. Just because I want to keep the example simple, I'm going to go ahead and actually check these and uncheck them. So I'm going to clear all of these off. And I'm going to focus directly on like Durasteel plates, let's say field coils, maybe shield components. Actually, I don't know. Maybe just Durasteel plates and field coils. I'll say okay. There it is. And now we're set. If I say confirm, immediately it's going to start to undock and look for trades, right? Now, it seems like there are no valid trades, so let's take a look at why, right? So Durasteel plates and field coils. Right now, I know that the place that I want to serve is the Bunny League HQ. If I look at their logical overview right now, Durasteel plates, where are they at? They do have a need for them. You can see that I've got storage set aside for 1.5 million Durasteel plates. I only have 760,000, so we definitely have room for them. So I'll have to take a look at the source. And then field coils is the same thing. We've got room for them. We have 140,000 set aside, but we only have 113,000 on site. So if I actually look at the source, how much do they have on the station? Oh, they basically have none. That's why. So you can see they've got 1567, but it's all already being transported. So that's why there's no order for me to pick up, right? And if I look at field coils, I probably think that might be the same case. We have, yep, they're all being taken. 1,049 are being transferred out of 1,050. I guess one thing that we could do is just adjust the capacity and therefore create a demand. So right now it seems like we got a lot of smart chips, right? We have a full storage of smart chips and we could use some more, right? So let's create a demand. My guess is there's no demand for smart chips. So if we go over to the Bunny League HQ and look at smart chips, we have 100,000 set aside and we have 22,000 coming in and we're already full. So let's increase the allocation of storage and create a demand, and in theory we just adjust our little trader and everything's going to be good, right? So we have 100,000 plus 22. Let's make it so that we are going to say we want 150,000 smart chips like that. I want to buy up to 150,000. I'm going to lower that price, and then I'm going to sell all but, let's say, like 145,000 like that. So here we go. So we actually have a deficit now. So if I back on up and I head back to my trader, now I actually have to say, I'd actually like you to move smart chips as well. So now that I say okay, and now that I confirm, and then I unpause, it should be evaluating trades, and my guess is, there, boom. It just undocked, and my guess is going to pick up smart chips. It is. It's buying 1,400 smart chips, and where is it dropping it off? At the Bunny League HQ. Ain't that awesome? So essentially what we've done is we've made it so that we've got a supply mule that's dedicated to the entire sector, and if any station needs anything, then it will go ahead and it will handle the Durasteel plate requests, the field coil requests, and the smart chip requests. And that's how that works. So it's automatically picking that up, and it'll constantly evaluate. Once it finishes one trade, it'll look for another one, and so on and so forth, because it can only handle one at once. Now, how do you make that a little bit easier to manage? You don't want to do that whole process on every single trader individually when you get like 40, 50 of them. So I went ahead and I took that, let's say, ship and turned it into a fleet, right? So if I were to grab, let me borrow some from another fleet, right? So we've got our small traders. I'm actually going to grab these three right here. I'm going to remove all orders and assignments, and they're just chilling unassigned right now. Now if I take them, because we know that this is our leader, now if I take them, these three, and I right click and I say mimic, and I just choose a group like that, now I create a fleet, yes? And if I unpause, here's the fleet, so I'm going to pause again. So we know that this is our leader. This is the guy that we set up. He's got Durasteel plates, field coil, and smart chips. The other traders, I have not done that process for. I just dumped them as a mimic. And if I look at them, they now have orders buy smart chips and transfer smart chips. They're automatically picking up however you've defined the template guy. If you look at the assign to, it just says mimic. I didn't have to do the whole process again. So now if I want to make a change, I just make it on the leader of the fleet. I can add wares, I can change wares, I can change that. I don't want them to work with build storage anymore, all that kind of stuff. And then I just confirm every single one of the mimickers below in the fleet will pick up that change. And that's a lot easier to deal with. And you can see it becomes very easy to add more ships to the fleet because you just select them, right click, and then say assign, and then boom, they pick up all of that goodness, right? So super, super great. Supply mules are amazing. So I just have those going at all times. And, you know, if I need to make more ships, I can do that. And if I need to remove them, I can sell them off, whatever, and it's all good. Now, I should mention large and XL traders. You'll see a lot of them just kind of sitting here. It's because I haven't set them up as part of a fleet or anything like that. I typically find that large traders or XL traders, they're good for moving a lot of product a long distance. So in this case, this is all in-sector work. If I had to have them move all the way out here, I'd probably use a large trader that's a little more durable. The reason why is because there's constantly pirates and Yuzhan Vong and stuff like that. And large traders and XL traders, they typically have more powerful shields that allow them to take those hits and just kind of shirk them off and not care as much. Now, they're not 100% protected, but they're a lot more durable and you tend to not lose them as much. And you also have the advantage of being able to use them for moving larger items like Rhydonium core. So as an example, we've got our Rhydonium core factory out here. One core takes up a lot of a hold. One small trader can probably move one Rhydonium core. So using a large trader in that case, it makes a little more sense. Yeah, that kind of makes a little more sense, right? Your small and mediums I use for in-sector as supply mules with a supply mule role in a fleet. The large and the XL, I typically will manually adjust them and say, go ahead and move this material here or there, etc., etc. Although you can also set them up as station mules. Now, station mules are the exact opposite of the supply mule. A station mule has a source station that it represents, and it moves goods from this station to a new target, right? So in this case, when it comes to like the Rhydonium ore all the way over here in Bastion, now these guys, if we actually collapse right here, they've got some larger vessels that help serve. So if I were to take this guy and I were to remove his assignment right here, he's just chilling right now because I don't need Rhydonium core. But if I were to set up a station mule, then I would go into his behavior. I'd say station mule right here. And it shows me, what is your source station? Well, I would like it to serve... Oops, not that one. I would like it to serve the Rhydonium core factory way out here in Bastion. So I'm going to right click and select. There we go. Where do you want to send the Rhydonium core that you're picking? I'm going to go ahead and say target station, and I want to move them all the way over to the Bunny League HQ so we can build some capital ships. So I'm going to go ahead and right click on Bunny League HQ and select. So you can kind of see source station is the Rhydonium core in Bastion, and the target station is the Bunny League HQ. Now, do you want to assign the ship to the station? Yes, I will. So that's going to make it so that instead of being a separate fleet, it's going to be underneath, nestled underneath the Rhydonium core factory. Include energy cells, food and medication. That's if you want to move additional items. I just want pure Rhydonium core. Seller priority, never illegal. Those are other things. You can actually check out every single element that's available to adjust here on the GitHub that I'll leave in the description. I'll leave a link down there. But one thing that I do typically check is two-way trade. That actually makes it so that when you go and drop off some goods, if there's something that in a surplus that you can bring back, it will. So it's kind of like an efficient thing. I might need some extra refined metals, energy cells. Maybe they've got a surplus of them. They don't need these things. They're just going to go to waste. I'm going to grab them. I'm going to take them back with me when I go and pick up more Rhydonium core, right? And then last but not least, I'm going to say allow low volume, because I still want to move goods even if it's not completely full of your cargo hold. And then there's make target warehouse. You only have to do this once with one trader, but essentially what this does is it takes the target station and it turns it into a warehouse. So when we go to the logical overview, it'll create a slot for Rhydonium core if there isn't one already. In this case, I know we already have one, so I'm just going to say confirm. Once I confirm, you'll notice that that ship has quote unquote disappeared from the unassigned section. And if we go to Rhydonium core and Bastion, it has now appeared here. So it's nestled right underneath, and it now has a trade to execute. It's it's bringing over one Rhydonium core. My guess is we have a very limited amount of need for Rhydonium core, right? Yeah, so we basically maxed out. We have set aside 16,000, and we basically have 16,000. So there's no need for it, but he's going to appear here when he sells them over. The supply Mule mod is relatively new to me. I haven't used it much at all until Star Wars Interworlds, and it's been a huge boon. It's been really nice. Instead of saying, I'd like you to be a local auto trader, or I'd like you to go around the sector and try to pick up deals and do kind of the same thing, but I felt like there was a lot more micromanaging on a per trader vessel or per trader basis, as opposed to just, here's a whole fleet, do the thing, I only have to assign it for one guy, go. And I think that's been so helpful. So hopefully you found that helpful. If you have any more, I guess, specific questions or something I can help with, please feel free to let me know. I hope you enjoyed that one, and if you did, please feel free to like, share, or comment down below. It helps us a great deal. I had a total blast. I hope you did as well, and I can't wait to get into the next one with you. Have a wonderful night.